will never be your chair either."
Harry ignored Draco's look of confused petulance and addressed the whole group, raising his arms out to gesture around him.
"This is the Hydra Throne. It was crafted by Salazar Slytherin himself before he left Hogwarts to provide guidance to future generations of Slytherin students. This seat is reserved for the student who claims the mantle of the Prince of Slytherin." "And that's you?"
asked Rodney disbelievingly. Olivia had gently put her hand on his wand arm, which he slowly lowered. Harry burst into laughter.
"No, of course not. Don't be silly, Rodney. An 11-year-old prince. That would be laughable. Mind you, I do plan to be the Prince of Slytherin, but I have years to go before I satisfy the requirements of the position. No, I'm just sitting here now because, well, I guess you could say I have special permission for one night only. A dispensation, so to speak. Which is a good thing, since the throne is perfectly capable of killing people who sit here without permission. Now, as I said out in the common room, I have something important to say, but it's something I want kept quiet, which is why we're here." "You say?"
he continued.
"There are reasons almost no one knows about this room or this chair or the whole Prince of Slytherin deal. One reason is that the prince himself is not someone who struts around bragging about his status. Or hers, for that matter. Nearly half the princes have been female. The prince rules from the shadows, quietly shaping and guiding the house according to Salazar's vision instead of bullying others around like a spoiled child, an idea that is clearly beyond your comprehension, Draco. But the most important reason for the prince's secrecy is naturally magic."
Harry gestured around the room.
"This room, the prince's lair, carries a powerful enchantment, one that has preserved its secrets for 11 centuries. While this chair is occupied, whether long-term or just temporarily, a magical contract covers the doorway, binding anyone who enters to an oath of secrecy. After we leave here, we'll all be completely incapable of discussing anything that's said in here tonight without the express permission of the prince himself. And since I'm the acting prince, if for one night only, I'm confident we'll all be keeping our secrets. Whatever is discussed at this table, you won't be able to repeat to anyone else or even write down. You can't be made to reveal anything under Veritasrum or even the Imperius. And if a Legilimens tries to read you, all he'll find is inky blackness and silence where any memories about this room should be. All of which means I can say my piece without fear of gossip. And then, once you're satisfied with my Slytherin bona fides, we can move on to resolving my little conflict with Draco."
Draco made a face at Harry's familiarity, but inside he was exceedingly nervous. He had never heard about this room or about any Prince of Slytherin, and certainly didn't know that it was a title his own father had once held. Worse, he had the increasingly disturbing feeling that by pushing Harry Potter too far, he had unleashed something quite beyond his control, something dangerous, perhaps even terrible. Following the lead of the older Slytherins, Draco sat down in one of the chairs nearest the door, opposite Flint. The two prefects sat on either side of the table in the middle chairs, leaving an open chair on either side of Potter. As they sat, Harry smiled warmly at them all, but Draco could see malice in those green eyes, and he shuddered slightly as he remembered Harry's promise to crush him like a bug.
"All right, firstie,"
said Marcus somewhat irritably. He alone had absolutely no idea what was going on, which, at the moment, put him in the odd position of being the one person in the room not afraid of Harry Potter. "We're here. What's so important that you have to say to us?" Harry's smile actually broke out into a broad grin as he chuckled softly.
"I am sorry, Marcus. I was a bit unclear. I said I had something to say that would prove my worthiness as a Slytherin. I never meant to imply that I would be speaking to any of you."
And then Harry Potter HISSED. The other four had barely a fraction of a second to process the fact that Harry Potter, heir to House Potter and brother of the boy who lived, is a bloody Parselmouth, when they were all startled by the movement and sounds which erupted all around them. Each of the 6-inch brass adder-head finials on the chairs instantly stretched into 3-foot-long writhing brass adders, which then twisted themselves around and extended their fangs just a foot or so away each Slytherin's head. Simultaneously, each of the silver snakes attached to the throne also came to life, writhing and hissing at the group. The great basilisk in the center bent down to look directly at Olivia, who screamed in mortal terror for nearly 8 seconds before she finally realized that it wasn't a real basilisk and its gaze wasn't fatal. It was another 10 seconds before the rest of the screams died down into a general hysterical mumbling and hyperventilation so that Harry could finally speak.
So,
he said easily.
do I have everyone's attention?
After a few more seconds of looking around in panic, the four Slytherins all slowly nodded. Rodney was the first to speak.
You're a Parseltongue. No, Rodney, I'm a Parselmouth.
Harry said.
Parseltongue is the language, Parselmouth is the person who speaks it. It's a common mistake. It took me a while to get it straight myself. But you're a Potter. Potters hate Slytherins. It's been that way for at least 200 years. Really, I had no idea it went back that far. I do know my birth father has an irrational hatred of Slytherins. He sent me a lovely note about it the day after my sorting. As I recall, you were all there when it exploded, but fortunately James Potter didn't raise me, and so I haven't absorbed any of his ancestral bigotries. The general topic of Parseltongue came up when we were visiting Diagon Alley last summer, and he mentioned his belief that being a Parselmouth is a sign of being a dark wizard, which is ignorant nonsense, but I thought it best to humour him and not reveal I had the talent. Of course, out there in the Muggle world I can only talk to actual snakes, but Hogwarts is so permeated with magic that nearly everything that even looks like a snake is susceptible to Parseltongue.
He looked around at all the snakes that surrounded him.
As you have no doubt noticed, is Jim a Parselmouth?
Asked Marcus. Harry perked up in amusement and considered the matter.
That's a very insightful question, Marcus. I can see why the Ashwender likes you. Honestly, I've no idea. Circumstances have never contrived to put me and Jim together in a room that had a snake in it. I wouldn't be surprised if he were, since he's my twin and all. Of course, my birth father's views on Parseltongue are hardly a secret, so I expect if Jim does have the gift, he's concealed it. Or maybe he's just never gotten close enough to a snake because of a childish belief that they're all slimy and evil.
Harry snorted.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if the boy who lived were a Parselmouth and it got publicly revealed? James would have a stroke. I'll have to look into arranging that. Anyway,
he continued,
it is true that no descendant of Salazar Slytherin has ever married into the Potter family, which means that I could only have inherited this gift, and it is exclusive to descendants of Salazar Slytherin from my mother's side. But your mother's a mud.
The adders on either side of Draco's head hissed loudly.
That is, a Muggle-born. How can she be descended from Salazar Slytherin?
Harry shrugged.
Well, presumably, reports of her Muggle-born status are somewhat overstated. Let's just say I've been exploring her family tree for a while and expect to have some answers by the end of this summer. Next question.
Olivia looked at him speculatively while trying to ignore the basilisk that loomed over his head. If you're not the Prince of Slytherin, who is?
As I said, there's not one at the moment. To become the prince, you have to be a student who's gained the approval of all 7 of the serpents who comprise the Hydra throne, each of whom represents a different characteristic that the founder considered important for his students.
Harry pointed up at the basilisk looming over him.
The big guy Raja represents ambition, although he prefers to think of it as vision. For him, it's not enough to be personally ambitious, like wanting to get rich or famous. You need an ambition to shape the whole world to your will in some way. To Raja's right is the python Jormungand, named after the snake that encircled the world. He represents political acumen and the ability to form winning coalitions. For example, he is very supportive of my membership in an inter-house study group, but is otherwise appalled at how insular the rest of the house has become over the last few decades. To Raja's left is Car the Cobra, who represents the Slytherin respect for intellect and academic excellence. Moving on down from him, we have Mara the Ashwinder, who represents cunning and cleverness. Next is Delilah the Boomslang, who represents the values of charm and subtlety which, as I've said, are greatly undervalued in the house nowadays.
He paused and looked over towards the Boomslang. In all honesty, I have to say Delilah's my favorite. She's a cutie. The Boomslang twisted her body around until her head was near to Harry's. He hissed at her softly and then tickled under her chin, causing the silver snake to make a soft kai-kai-kai sound, which the terrified Slytherin students all realized was the sound of a snake's laughter. Harry turned back to the group, focusing a suddenly grim expression towards Draco.
On the far right is the Krite Nidhogg, who represents ruthlessness.
He said without elaboration. Draco swallowed. He suddenly noticed that the Krite was staring at him intently and had been doing so for some time.
Last but not least, on the opposite side, we have the Runespur, whose 3 heads are called Tisiphone, Magira, and Alecto. They collectively represent respect for wizarding traditions, which I should point out is not synonymous with blood purity. That's a lie,
exclaimed Draco, despite the angry hissing of the brass adders. Salazar Slytherin wanted to purge the school of mudbloods. Harry sighed, and then flicked his wand lazily towards a bookshelf. ACCIO Slytherin Memoirs VOLUMES 1, 2, and 3. And with that, 3 large leather-bound volumes flew off the shelf and landed on the table with a thud.
The long-forgotten truth, Draco, is that Salazar Slytherin was opposed to Muggleborns attending Hogwarts, but not because they were inferior. It was because he thought they would be at an unfair disadvantage compared to the wizard-raised students. In the days of Hogwarts' founding, a Muggle-born most likely came from peasant stock, which meant he was illiterate, innumerate, highly superstitious, and probably never bathed. Salazar believed that Muggle-borns should be removed from Muggle society.